It's important to start off by saying this video is not meant to advocate or glorify any of the following behavior. It is intended to act as an educational exploration on substance abuse and altered states of consciousness as a whole. Please do not attempt to recreate anything that is discussed in this video. Please forgive me, as this is very long, but I'm gonna try to summarize as much as possible. I just need to share this experience because it's nothing like I've experienced before. I've been taking psychedelics for a few years now, and ever since I heard about DMT, I'd always wanted to try it. I waited till I felt ready, and felt like after all the trips and ego deaths I've already experienced, I was as ready as I'd ever be. So I got some changa and a bong, and had my friend trip sit, just as a precaution. I wasn't nervous at all. I was actually quite excited for the experience. So I got nice and comfortable, put on some headphones to play some lo-fi, and I took my first hit. Time instantly stopped. As I exhaled and moved the bong, it's as if I was watching a video, speeding up and rewinding, then pausing over and over again. It felt as if nothing was real, but I was watching a movie and someone else had the remote. I now started to feel quite nervous because it didn't feel like visuals at all. My mind was clear as ever, but reality had shattered. I told myself to just keep going, and I took my second hit when I started seeing geometric shapes in everything. They started shrinking, getting bigger, and then moving around. Very digital-like, as if I was in a video game and there was some kind of bug or glitch. When I looked at my hands, they looked ancient. All the lines were defined and my skin looked like stone. I started feeling the rising pressure in my chest, similar to that feeling when you're slowly going up a roller coaster right before the drop. And all of a sudden, that's when an entity pops right in front of me, in my face. It's not speaking, but I can feel that it's laughing, like it's enjoying that it's scaring me. It's wearing this long tribal mask, which is white with black symbols painted all over it. And at this point, I can still see that I'm in my bedroom. My eyes are open, but I feel it grab my arms and throw me with so much power, like those scenes in superhero movies where the guy's thrown through entire buildings. Except instead of buildings, I'm ripping through dimensions. I land in this space which looks like a jungle, but very animated. And at the time, it felt so real, like my actual life was all just an illusion. Keep in mind, none of the entities so far were actually talking. It was more so like I could feel the emotions they were sharing. It was a lot more intense and way more powerful than actual words. All these entities are surrounding me, and they had their tribal masks on. Their bodies were similar to a baboon or mandrill with what I could best describe as beige fur. On all fours, they were slightly taller than me and pretty intimidating. I was freaking out, and at this point, I was pretty sure I was gonna die. I was on the verge of crying, and I was just frozen in fear. So they just started showing me all of these things, which I unfortunately can't recall, but they were all very intense. Like, they really wanted me to see these things, when all of a sudden I start hearing the music from my headphones again, and these shapes appear everywhere. Now they're dancing to music, as if the music was communicating to them. Then these snakes started slithering towards me, very bright and colorful, and they seemed to be enjoying the music too. They started to slither all around my body, and I could feel the cold, silky smooth tendrils all over me. I wasn't scared. Actually, it calmed me down. They were telling me to just relax and be calm. When it ended, I was so freaked out after that experience. It only lasted for about 5 minutes, but I felt like I needed to go back and understand what they were trying to tell me. I figured I'd be a lot calmer the second time, especially now that I knew what to expect. Oh, how wrong I was. After a couple hours and a nice long nap, I got ready for my second attempt. This time, no music, just silence. I take my first hit, and it's exactly like last time. I take my second hit, and I start getting the same visuals as before, except way more intense. I started panicking again, feeling like I made a mistake, and I didn't want to go back. But I tried to tell myself that it was okay. There's no turning back now. I took my third hit, and immediately I'm blasted off into that exact animated jungle. The tribal baboon grabs me by my shirt and pulls me close, looking right into my eyes, and he threw me with so much force again that I felt like I broke the sound barrier, landing in this other part of the jungle. They just kept saying very loud, "Look, look, do you understand?" over and over, and the biggest one kept throwing me to different places. I broke down crying, trying to tell them that I'm sorry, but I just can't understand them. I'm really trying though. I didn't feel like they were hostile, but they just really wanted me to understand something, and they were so intense about it. I could feel all of that pressure, and it was just making me panic more. I knew they were trying to help me, and I could feel they cared, but they were still freaking me out. Then they called someone, and behind them is a mountain, and this enormous white snake came out from behind it towards me. It felt like she was some goddess. glowing blue eyes and a blue tongue. I couldn't even describe how beautiful she was. She was also insanely huge, as if she was larger than the universe itself. She came towards me, and I could feel this sense of warmth and love. Instantly, I calmed down. She showed me all of these symbols and shapes to try and help me understand what the baboons were saying, but for the life of me, I still couldn't figure it out. The baboon came back, stood on 2 legs, grabbed me, and pulled me right to his face, saying, "You're not ready," and hurled me like a baseball, landing me back in my bedroom and opening my eyes as I was trembling in fear. The second trip was about 7 minutes, and I still don't know what the lesson was that I needed to learn, but I definitely felt like I needed to take some time to focus on growing myself before I take DMT again. I definitely will take it again, but I just know now is not the time, because I'm certain the same thing is just going to keep happening until I change. This was written only hours after my experience. I'm gonna try my best with this because it was so profound and bizarre, yet scary, yet beautiful and meaningful all in one. So we all got comfy in the room our friend Billy provided for us. A pretty decent hotel, to be fair. Billy burned some sage and we set our intentions. I volunteered to go first since I introduced the DMT to all 3 people there. I tried to use some of the scales that we had, but they weren't reading anything, at least not the right measurements, so I had to eyeball it. It was my first time with this stuff, and to be honest, I didn't have a clue, but I put quite a bit in because I knew I needed a good time. My brother expertly got the deems to start bubbling, and as I laid on the bed, I introduced my lips onto the smoking pipe and took a nice, slow, gentle breath. I held it for about 10 seconds and then took another. This second toke hit me hard. I held that in for about the same time as the first, and I could feel myself going. I always remember the third toke, even with Changa. I knew it was important, so I leaned forward. My body was trembling at the moment, and the strain of holding my body up was too much. So once I got that last good toke, I held it in and put my head on the pillow. First of all I saw was white, like a bright light. It suddenly disappeared, and then I was immersed into another world. The first bit didn't make any sense. I'm still trying to comprehend it, but all I can remember is that the world was completely mechanical. Everywhere was like cogs inside of a watch. It's the only way to describe the world swirling and morphing into what wasn't itself. Coming out of those fast-paced cogs were a whole manner of strange things, beings, but nothing like I've ever seen before. These entities kept coming at me really fast, showing me something, but then merging with the environment. It was undescribable. So much happened that I could only keep my mouth wide open. And after some crazy encounters, my thoughts were, yeah, I can't be doing DMT for a long time after this. And as all of the beings kept coming to me, I just kept saying, yeah, I get it. I get it. And all of a sudden, these machine beings stopped time to create a bubble around us. There were loads of them, and they kept getting right up to my face, screaming at me to do it. I ended up crying like a little girl, screaming, "What? Do what?" Then suddenly, I felt a strange feeling in my belly. It came up like a burp, and I shit you not, I made a noise that I've never made before. In the trip though, the sound actually converted into objects. I was so shook from this that I couldn't even take this in, but time went on anyway. I moved through all the mechanics of this world, still morphing, and outlines of people were coming out of the cogs still. They kept trying to pull me into their space, but I would always look away and they would retreat back, almost like my attention to them would cause them to come out. Everything kept moving super fast and was so real. It had literally felt like my soul was going through a complete cleansing, and I definitely saw one of those classic machine elves. But when I started to come back, I couldn't believe it. All my friends were speaking and it sounded like they were mad. It was like they kept saying the same thing, but it was really fast and all of their words were bouncing off of each other. It was a pretty humbling experience, and it was definitely more than I expected. And I also learned a good lesson. DMT is not for everyone, and it should be treated with the utmost respect. This has shaped up to be a long one. Please, if anyone has had a similar experience or any type of insight into what this meaning is, please share it with me. It's been 2 days, and I'm still finding myself questioning whether I'm still even alive, or at least in my original timeline. So let me start off with a little background. I'm relatively new to Spice in terms of time, but have definitely jumped in with both feet. I've been wanting to try it for nearly a decade, but it has been extremely rare / non-existent in my part of the world. About 4 or 5 months ago, though, it magically appeared in my life, as many say it does when the time is right. Someone gave me a small glass vial, and I got maybe 10 doses out of that, with maybe 3 true breakthrough experiences. Until this point in my life, I've been what most would consider just a normal guy. I'm a musician and creative type, sure, but I have a regular big boy job and provide for a wife, kid, and 2 dogs. Your normal middle-class adult life for the most part. I've remained very reverent with every use, even as my trip count has risen. It's become somewhat of a routine, treating it like a medicine or tool for exploration, always setting intention and never taking it too lightly. I've never felt an energy from any of my entity encounters that felt like they didn't want me to be there or didn't want me to come back. But last night was extremely foreign and unsettling. It's lingered intensely, and I don't expect this will fade anytime soon. I have a small 12 by 16 shed in my backyard that I've transformed into a home studio where I make music and kind of just hang out in the evenings after work. Naturally, this has become the launch pad for my journeys into alternate realities and cartoon fantasy-scapes. I even bought a pretty sweet little packable cot off of Amazon a month or so back. I'll set my cot out, lower the lights, put some low meditation chanting or music on, and play some interesting visuals on the TV. Last night, around 12 a.m., I loaded my GVG with 40 milligrams of spice, lied down on my pillows to prop me up, and I took my regular 2 big long inhales and held them in for about 15 to 20 seconds. I felt it coming on pretty strong, so I set everything down beside me on the floor. And usually, as I lie back, my eyes close on their own, and the majority of the trip is spent that way. I'll normally open them as I'm coming back to base reality and enjoy the electric sheep or whatever I've selected to have going on the TV. This time, though, the craziness of the television began to pour out into the room in like a kind of insane, beautiful detail that was constantly in flux and wrapping around the walls, surrounding me in my cot. I began to feel the presence of a jester entity, and I have a strong sense that this intense and beautiful diorama unfolding in my shed is a collaborative effort between me and the jester. My eyes are open this entire trip. I just have that wide-eyed, confused, how is this even possible look plastered on my face for the 8 to 9 minute duration of the trip, before it all started to wane and I slowly came back to my cot to enjoy the afterglow. This experience was intense and honestly just fun. So fun that I decided to load up a smaller dose and go back at it again. Now, I've only done this maybe 2 to 3 other times and I never really had any negative side effects. I really wish I would have just basked in the glow of the jester's moving art display for a bit longer, but here comes the scary part. I took this next dose in fully and held it in. This time, my eyes forced themselves closed, and I'm seeing the room that I'm in with these cartoon shooting stars in tons of different colors, kind of just shooting out everywhere. Then, after maybe a minute, I open my eyes again, and something very strange has happened to my surroundings. Also, my thought patterns and depth of recall. The only way I could describe it is that it's like if reality was a video game on PC. Normal reality is the program running at 100%, but when I opened my eyes, everything was as if the output had been turned down to 30. The room I'm in is the room I'm in, but the texturing detail is greatly reduced. Lots of things were missing, but like small things. Things that the program would think I'm less likely to notice, like the cup on my desk. If this is a 30% setting, there was only enough bandwidth to process, let's say, 25 total items from my field of view. The other resources were all going to the big things that would be too obvious if they weren't there. This all scared me so much that I sat up and tried to turn myself to sit sideways. I pan around the room and I'm literally seeing the items in my room depopulate and repopulate to stay with the bandwidth settings. Also, room proportions were off, but only slightly. They were close, but off enough you'd notice they were obviously wrong. It's like regular life was the fidelity of a photograph, and this was a marker drawing by a talented artist. Kinda close, but obviously not the real thing. I think to myself, lie back down. You're having a bad trip. It'll be over soon. Minutes. Just close your eyes. Reset the trip. I do this, but when I lie down and close my eyes again, it's dark, just like it normally is. As I'm thinking to myself and processing my thoughts, I realize what I'm thinking is also reflective of the same downgrades of my visual processing. It's like my mental processing was also turned down to 30%. I don't mean this in terms of intellect. It's not like I only felt 30% as smart as I normally did. I still had all of that data and information in there, but I could only access at 30% efficiency. It's as if the spotlight of my mind, which was usually a floodlight, was nerfed down to a handheld flashlight. I started to test this, and and tried to think of a name of someone I knew, but there was only a shallow profile. The majority of our interactions and small nuances were hazy. When I opened my eyes again, nothing had changed. Still 30%. At this point, I'm starting to get scared. This has been going on way longer than any other trip I've had so far, and I mean by like a while. Things are not going back to normal. There is also this absence of sound. Dead silence. I sit up again and I'm kind of panicking now. I try to shake my head and will myself out of this strange purgatory space I've ended up in. Of course, this was all pointless, did absolutely nothing but scare me more. Then I get this overwhelming deep sense that either I've died or this is some sort of projection of my home that's only a shadow helping me get through this transition, that I myself am only a program, not my real self. Everything felt too hollow, like there was no substance or actual depth. It was all cardboard boxes painted to look like my familiar surroundings, strings of code to imitate my computer desk. I was so deeply shaken that I was panicking. I told myself I had to get up, open the door to my studio, and see if there was actually anything beyond these four walls that surrounded me. I opened my door, and it was dark out. My backyard was like everything else, though, a shadow of its former self. But, at least it was there, as was my house. But everything was still silent. No wind, no crickets, no rustling at all. At this point, it's approaching 2 a.m. I'm now simply just trying to come to grips with the nature of my new reality. I am no longer me, at least not in the sense that I've always been. I'm either some conscious copy, or I'm now my disembodied soul in purgatory or hell. It's way too much for me to grapple with, so suddenly I feel an overwhelming loss toward my 15-year-old son and his mother. I have to know they're inside the house, or if I've lost them forever. I shoot up from my cot and run barefoot in the cold to my back door, and I open it as slowly and quietly as I could to step inside. All of the lights were off, and the theme continued in the house. Resources were still governed to 30%. Nothing was as it should be. I walked slowly and quietly through the living room to the front of the house where my son's bedroom is. I crack his door and called out to him, "Gav, are you asleep?" It was almost pitch black in his room, but I hear his blankets rustling, and he says, "Yeah." It was the most beautiful sound my ears had ever heard. I didn't trust it anywhere near fully, but I remember thinking, at least this shadow of my life has some version of my boy here with me. I tell him, "Okay, just checking on you, dude. Love you." I closed his door and walked slowly back through the living room toward the master bedroom where my wife was asleep. She isn't an explorer in any sense of the word related to substances, and she doesn't like very much that I've recently began to experiment with them. She's a pretty normal, straight-laced woman. It took a lot of time to patiently explain and show studies and so forth to even get her to the point of separating DMT from things like heroin or cocaine. It's still a very delicate line that I try very hard to maintain with her, so I'm normally extremely careful to not do or act in any way that I'd push her to seeing my use as bad or dangerous. Well, that went right the heck out the window as soon as I slinked into our bedroom, slid into my side of the bed, and reached over to her to see if she was even there. I felt her arm under the blankets and I whispered, "Steph, are you there?" She slightly turned and, barely awake, she says, "What?" Yes, why wouldn't I be? Even though visually and cognitively nothing had changed from those 30% settings, I was so relieved to hear her voice, actually feel her there, solidly existing under the blankets. So even though I was still terrified, convinced I'd broken something in my mind, I couldn't help but also at least feel some relief that I'm not alone. We have been together for over 15 years and have never been the types to show mushy affection toward each other, but I couldn't stop myself from telling her that I loved her in that moment, and that's when she knew something was up. Surprisingly, like almost too surprisingly, she didn't seem mad. She assured me that she was real and that she was actually there, told me to just get in bed and try and sleep. I listened and we laid there talking for about 15 minutes or so, and the whole time I had this deep certainty that this was all just some trick and there'd be no morning after once I fell asleep. Even as my eyes now adjust to the dark of the room, I was still faintly able to see my surroundings were off. I finally drifted off to sleep, and thankfully there was a morning, and when I opened my eyes, everything was back to normal. But this still deeply shook my sense of reality. It's almost as if I crashed the machine with that second dose and booted back up in safe mode, which manifested into that strange 30% comparison world. I know this was long, but I wanted to do the experience justice in its description. I hope it was at least an interesting read.